I am an artist living in beautiful Vermont, USA, and I have a lot of questions. So I engage the minds of the people that I meet, poets, writers, artists. I explore what's inside and share it with you. My name is Ricky McGeckran, and I am eager to know. Hey everyone, welcome to Eager to Know. I'm excited to have Ben Gardner, who is the Director of Vermont Academy at Mount Snow. Welcome, Ben. That was a mouthful. I had to do that a couple times. But Ben, you have a background in mathematics, in science, in education, snowboarding, skiing, and you're a coach. I don't know how we're going to squeeze everything in a half hour. There's so much that we want to talk about.
Well, thanks for having me on, Rick. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Now, let's start with talking about education, because you started with, like I mentioned, you had a background in math and science, and you did something really related to that. I think you have a degree in geology,
yes, sir.
And you worked in the petrochemical or the oil and gas industry, but then you switched into education. Can you tell me about why you did that?
Mm-hmm. So it was 2012, the spring, summer of 2012, and I had it. The oil and gas industry was not who I believed I was, and I was doing the same thing every day. The only difference in my schedule is I would drive home. It was in Denver, Colorado at the time, and so I would just change up my day to day by driving home a different way from work, which kept things a little new and fresh. So it was pretty obvious that I needed a new path. So what I did is I quit my job on my birthday. It was a birthday present to myself, and I moved to Argentina for the summer. And when I got down to Argentina, the purpose of it was snowboarding. And going into down there, I was guiding for a company, South American Snow Sessions, as an intern. And I was just kind of finally I was myself, and I was on my journey. And while I was down there, I worked for Habitat for Humanity, building some houses. And it was on this Habitat for Humanity build that education kind of first cropped its head up. So we were working in this town that had been ravaged by floods. I mean, there was still standing water in some of the areas, and we were working on this one family's home, and I took a liking to the son and daughter who were there. I was building, but then they were helping me, and just kind of interacting with them on a real human level, this family, especially these kids. And There was an educator on that trip who had been I don't know if he was a principal or a superintendent, but he'd been in education his whole life. And
somebody from the U.S.?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was probably 8 U.S. people on this trip, on just this Habitat for Humanity build. And so he looked at me and he was like, generally, the people who have that big of smiles when they're working with kids belong in education. And so that moment really stuck for me. And I was like, I'd never considered it my entire life up to this point of should I get into education? And
right.
That moment I was like, and I banked it. And then I moved to Telluride, Colorado, and was living out the ski bum lifestyle dreams there, working in a ski shop, snowboarding 120 days a year. And the idea of education came up again, and I started my journey at Director Academy, which was a summer camp, and I was a summer camp counselor just to see if that education thing really was for me, and It turned out it really was.
All right. Now, I have some questions about your initial statement. You have a degree in geology. You got a job in oil and gas, which I would imagine that is the dream job for someone with a degree in geology. Was it the dream job for you?
So it was pretty interesting because it was at a time where I was really still believed that as soon as you get out of college, you had to go get that job right away. And I had an offer, and I had done the hard work. I had interned the summer before, and I had done everything, and it was definitely the easiest way on a path, right? My parents stated, or whatever we think societally is that path to success. You go to college, you get your first job, you work up the corporate ladder. I was on my way in that path, but that just turned out not to be my path.
Okay. So this is so fascinating to me because I had a very similar path as you. And how did you know that this was not for you? Because there's so many people that are in that exact same situation and they stay in the job, even if they don't have kids, and but they stay because that is what they should be doing, or this was the dream job. What was it about you that made you open to saying no?
I think it was just that thirst for more and that like understanding that there was more out there for me. And, I think that a lot of us fall into that path because it's what's comfortable. And it's like, okay, if I stay in these lanes, my life's going to be good. It's going to be safe. Like I'm going to hit these metrics and I'm never going to be that uncomfortable. It's kind of a fear-based mindset of not being uncomfortable rather than ripping off the Band-Aid, moving to Argentina, and like starting what really was my life instead of just doing what maybe my friends, parents, society told me I should be doing. I just was like, no, I've had enough of doing what y'all have told me, and now it's time to really live intentionally to like the core of who I am.
Nice. The good is the enemy of the best. I'm sure you've heard of that. If you're in a good situation, that is the biggest enemy to doing something that is going to be the best for you. Because if you're in a horrible situation, you're like, get me the heck out of here. But if it's good, people will stay in it.
Yeah.
Let's change gears a little bit, and I want to talk about building communities. Let's talk about that. And I know in the pre-interview, you shared with me a really interesting story.
Mm-hmm. So I pretty much in my adult life, I've been building communities. I came from Telluride, where I built the Free Ride Committee, which was this backcountry ski organization that empowered kids to learn about avalanche education in school. And we were the first ones to ever do it, and other schools called us because it actually is going to save a bunch of kids' lives like going forward, because they learn about avalanche education in school when they're focused, not just like on a random weekend. So that was kind of the first community I created. And then coming to Vermont Academy at Mount Snow, I have this opportunity to create a new community. And in kind of that transition, I really came up with this idea that I really believe, and I think your listeners will really resonate with, is the idea of the skate park versus the airport. At the skate park, everyone is present with one another. Everybody is looking out for each other. You have to, so you don't run into each other. But it's more than that. People are cheering for each other. People are excited to catch up, are excited to talk. You and I, we could grab our skateboards right now. You could have never skateboarded. I don't know if you do or not. We could go stand at the skate park. We could go cheer other people on. And eventually, we'd have a conversation, strike up a conversation with somebody. It's that presence. It's that humanness that comes out of being at a skate park, out of that community support that I really love. Now, let's think about the airport. At the airport, everybody gets on their device from the moment they leave their car until they get to their destination. They're bringing their social network with them because they are anxious about true human interaction in that airport. It feels weird. Everybody's uncomfortable. You look at your cell phone to get your ticket, but then you also are just sit there and scroll through whatever information you want to while you're sitting at the gate. And I found what's shocking to me is oftentimes if you make eye contact with somebody at the airport, it's not well received. It feels awkward. It's like everybody looks back to their cell phones really quickly. I challenge you, the next time you're in the airport, look around. Pull your head away from your device and just look and see. There are not many eyeballs that are also looking up, ready to engage. Yeah. And so I am dedicated to bringing a community more like a skate park than like an airport to Vermont Academy and to Vermont Academy Mount Snow. I want presence. I want to have real human connection, and I think that's the best thing we can do for adolescents today.
That sounds great. Now, what are you planning on doing to make that happen?
So I love that you asked that. So right when you walk in the doors of the Matterhorn Inn, which is where Vermont Academy Mount Snow is located, we actually have a cell phone sleeve. And so what we're doing is I've designated spaces within that building that are presence spaces versus cell phone spaces. And the presence spaces include this new kind of like hearth living room we've devised, which has like this sectional. It's got a fireplace, it's got a TV, and then we've got our dining hall down there, our kitchen. All of those spaces are cell phone free because those are like, I look at them as like family areas. It's like spaces where we need to be present with one another.
Right.
Whereas you can be on your cell phone up in the upper level of the place, or you can be on your cell phone in your room or somewhere else. But if you want to be present with our community, we're asking you to put your phone away and be present, because that's where we're really going to help engage with each other and build ideas instead of just sit there and scroll in our own worlds. In building communities, I'd say the opportunity that Vermont Academy has, and there's something they're doing that's completely unique, is they did take the big swing to purchase this ski academy. It's a 35-bedroom old ski lodge, and that feels so right for me in that setting because my capacity is 35 kids. So it's going to, by definition, be a small community. And it's really, I think, one that's built around action sports is huge because action sports help adolescents gain self-worth and identity because everybody's welcome in action sports. Just like at the skate park, everybody's welcome. It's like they can also see and they can feel that self-worth through like landing tricks, right? In snowboarding, for example, if you want to go learn a 360, you go out, you maybe watch some videos, you listen to a coach, you practice, you keep throwing your 360, maybe you fall down, maybe you get hurt, maybe you even go to the hospital or something, but you keep working on it and you keep building it. And man, when you land that 360, you're going to be so excited and you're going to feel that. You're going to feel that self-worth because you're going to know that was your goal, you set it, and you got there. And then you also have team and a coach like cheering you on, which gives you a little bit more juice, right? So I think that action sports and the action sports community is also something that's like really relevant right now for adolescents because it's a great place where they can see that their hard work pays off. And there's some spaces that doesn't exist anymore. So I really think that the action sports community is a huge integral part of what we're doing as well.
So I have some questions about Vermont Academy at Mount Snow. It is 35, so it's 35 students? Is that accurate?
That are boarding there, yep.
That are boarding, and then there are other students that are day students, is that accurate?
We can have day students kind of probably up to like 25 with like a total capacity at our school about 50 right now.
Okay, and this was a school that was in existence, but it was merged or purchased by Vermont Academy?
Yes.
Okay. And then do you know the intention of why Vermont Academy decided to branch out to purchase this satellite school? Yeah,
they one of their pillars was land and another pillar, and they wanted to be genuine. So back in, I should know the Vermont Academy history a little bit better, but I'm new. So back in the 70s and early, kind of back in the day, Vermont Academy and skiing went hand in hand. We had Olympians. The Shivers Warren Shivers was an Olympian for us, and there was a bunch of other Olympians back in the day for Nordic combined and jumping and all that. That's why there's that amazing jump up on the campus right now. And so the purchasing of what was Mount Snow Academy to become Vermont Academy at Mount Snow was a tactical move to get Vermont Academy focused strategically on skiing and snowboarding. And I'd like to report back that we have 75 kids out of a population of 230 that have shown some interest of skiing or snowboarding this winter. It's fantastic.
Wonderful. Now, if I were a student in Vermont Academy at Saxon's River, would I have, how would that relate to the resources at Mount Snow?
It's perfect. So what they've done is, because Vermont Academy is on the trimester system, if you're a student, you can go to the fall at Saxon's River, then you can just move on over to your winter dorm, spend the winter trimester with us at the Mount Snow campus, and then move on back to Saxon's River for the springtime. So it really gives kids who go to Vermont Academy that perfect world where you can be at a boarding school and at a ski academy in 1 year.
That sounds unbelievable.
It is pretty unbelievable.
That is incredible. Wow, I want to be a high school student.
I would do high school again if I could do it this way.
Totally. Now, one of the things that you shared with me about you personally that I thought was so interesting is that you consider yourself, or you are, a lifelong learner. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I think the ethos I learned about being a lifelong learner in my educational psychology master's degree. And what we talk about a lot in that is being open to learning and understanding that you're not the purveyor of knowledge as a teacher. More, you're somebody who's like in the learning process. And to acknowledge that you're a lifelong learner means that you're acknowledging that you're going to make mistakes, and you're acknowledging that you're not there yet. And
that's very uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I mean, I take big swings, and I'm somebody who, like, I really put in 100%, and so, like, but I do make mistakes, and my wife would tell you right away that, like, there's a lot that happens when you're moving 100 miles an hour, that there's a wake behind you, and so I guess my promise as a lifelong learner to the students I work with, to the other faculty members, is like, I'm going to try my hardest, and I have a growth mindset, and I know that I may not be there yet, but I'm willing to put in the hard work necessary to get there. And so even if I make a mistake, call me on it. I'll be the first to receive that feedback. But like, at no point am I there. At no point am I like, oh, I'm done learning. Like, that's it for me. It's like, no, like, learning, the beauty of being a lifelong learner is that you're acknowledging that you're going to learn for the rest of your life. That means that at 90 years old, 100 years old, like, I'm still going to be learning. Yeah. And I think that that's also the best thing for your brain. It makes it keep firing.
Absolutely. I recently started, so I'm a lifelong learner as well. I have plenty of people, though, in my life that are much more of, they like to be in an area of comfort, so that they're not necessarily, they like to master something and stay in a place of mastery and not trying something new. I love trying something new because there's this, there's kind of an arc where it's like, there's so much potential and hope. And then it's the learning. And then you get to the point where you're like, okay, actually, I'm going to be at level 4, and there's a whole community of people that are way better than me at whatever this is, and it's just something that you have to get used to. I recently started taking piano lessons like 2 years ago, and that was an incredible insight onto how our brain learns and develops, because when you're learning piano, you're being given pieces that are impossible. Absolutely impossible. And depending on where you are with your piano, either you can master them in a couple hours, or right now I have stuff that's taking me a year. But it made me realize the capabilities and the capacity that our brains have for learning and doing really complicated, sophisticated things. I think a lot of what you talk about is physicality. Mm-hmm. You gave that example of doing a 360 where you're being presented with this challenge and you fall and go to the hospital, but you keep at it and eventually your body can do it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I would say to you, like, what was the hardest part about, what has been your biggest challenge as you've learned piano?
The biggest challenge is learning the biggest challenge is not approaching everything at one time. And I have such a great piano teacher, because what she does is she's like, Rick, we need to pull this down to something small, that the smallest portion that you can execute, whether it's a measure or whether it's just 3 notes. And once I get that, then we extend it out, and eventually I can do the piece. And I'm realizing I wish I had known that, looking back at other challenges or things that seemed so overwhelming in projects. I wish I had realized that it feels overwhelming, but your capacity to do it is there. But your brain works the way a brain works, which means you do have to break it down into something that is doable, and then you build it out.
Yeah, and what your piano teacher did so well in that model is to focus you in on that one key piece that was going to then build in and build, right? Because our brains get overwhelmed easily. A lot of times it could be like you looking at this long document that you have to get through, this reading. Like for me, I'm reading through these handbooks to try to make them applicable to my campus. And it's like, if I try to do the whole thing in one night, I liken it to my analogy of trying to eat Thanksgiving dinner, right? Yeah. You can't eat Thanksgiving dinner in one bite. Right. You can't. It's not possible. But you can take little bites at it, and eventually you're getting on your way. And so, I think I appreciate that you saying that about your teacher, is like bringing it in and remembering that, like, you can do it. And a lot of growing and learning is the prevention of being overwhelmed or like feeling failure and like getting knocked back down, right? It's like a lot of it is like, okay, just like chip away. And eventually you're standing on top of the mountain and you have all these tricks or whatever,
One of the things that you had mentioned to me is this idea of many aspects of our education system are not meeting our needs. Can you Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, let's dive into this a little bit. So, as in my master's of educational psychology, I really was grappled, and my professors asked us to grapple with the fact of like in kind of review education. And I don't think there are a lot of people that like can review it. It's so big. It's bigger than all of us, right?
I don't follow you. What do you mean?
If we look at the public school system
Yeah.
or the private school system or education altogether in our country, not a lot of people are given that permission to like examine it and be like, is it actually serving us?
Oh, they're not. I assume people were.
But it's not really like you. I don't know what your experience is. Most parents, they're so busy, right? They're going to their 9-to-5 jobs. They're just grinding. They're just like, I'm going to drop my kids at school. They're going to do the best they can, and they're going to come home. But like, wait a second. Like, what are they learning? How is it being done? Like, what is the foundational roots of education? And the longer I was in classes and the more I understood that the roots of education in our country go back to 200 years ago when every kid was learning the exact same thing so that they could make the exact same part in a factory during the Industrial Revolution. Like, that is the ethos of the education system that we currently live in. Here, when we have Google and the internet and life is moving at 10,000 miles an hour, we're still all learning the exact same thing. The brain doesn't work that way. The way the brain works is from concrete to abstract. Kids should be learning the most concrete. Like when they're toddlers, they're learning about the house. They're learning about that room. You know, they're in elementary school. They should be learning about, like, we both live in Saxton's River. Their learning should be focused in the village of Saxton's River because they can really process that. They can really understand that. And then you get to middle school where it's more of a regionalism, like New England, maybe even to the whole United States. But to have every kid learn the same thing across, regardless if they live in Colorado, Nebraska, Florida, or Vermont, is kind of a wild concept. And it doesn't really allow kids to, I don't think, like realize their full potential because they're not able to grow the way that their brain grows.
Okay. How is success in education, and I know this is probably a huge question, but how is success in education measured? Like, how do we decide that an educational program in a town is working? I
would say that it really is up to the individuals, and I would say that it's what does that student look like? You know, I think the really key in education is always coming back to what is the best thing for that student. And I think the best educational systems are the ones that can morph and meet the individual student's needs as best they can, where it's not a generalized prescription across multiple kids or whatever. I think it's more like being able to be flexible because then that product is a kid who learned the why. Like, how many times did your teachers tell you why you were learning something in school?
They did not. And yeah.
Exactly. So, and mine didn't either. And I think that that's an interesting conversation for us to have, is that like we should be able to tell the why.
Right. And I went to a good school system. I'm from Burlington, Massachusetts. And, you know, Massachusetts has like the best schools, I believe, in the country. And my school was pretty decent. So I definitely was in a good school system. But interesting.
It's interesting because so what we're doing at Vermont Academy at Mount Snow is we're creating these cross-curricular blocks. So what we've done is we've identified and is where learning is really going to be at its best is when the teacher is just as excited as the student about the learning that's going on. Yeah. So how do you get there? You throw away the rules that say everybody's got to learn the exact same thing at the exact same time, and you build a class. And you build a class that goes across mathematics, science, English, history, whatever. And you look at it, rather than a class, you look at it as a topic. So, for example, at Vermont Academy at Mount Snow, we have the topic, how is climate change affecting the winter sports industry? Okay, we chose that topic because these kids are diehard skiers and snowboarders. They have to understand climate change and how it's affecting them and how it could affect them in their careers in this, right? And so what we did is we had the teacher design the class. We said, hey, is this where I didn't even tell them what they had to design. This is a class that one of my teachers came up with because they're so passionate as well. So they said, hey, let me teach this class on how climate change is affecting winter sports industry, And like, I have all these sources, all these experts we can talk to and do, right? And now, like, just find me some kids to take that class. And I'm like, great, I can find some kids to take that class with you. And then boom, we have a passionate teacher who will be able to tell the why, because they understand the nuance of the problem, teaching it to kids who care about it, who want to learn about it. And then they're utilizing the internet and all of the amazing technological resources we have in today's age to like dig deeper than they could have ever dug in like a compartmentalized school structure. And so that's like the ethos behind cross-curricular blocks and cross-curricular curriculum. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I think education should be merging towards.
Nice. I remember when I was in sixth grade, I was in what was called the open classroom, where they took the wall down, and it was Miss Ciroli, who was science, and Mr. Shaloni, who was social studies. And we did this program where it was about solving problems in cities. And what we did is we had to physically build a city, and then we had to write how we came up with a solution for pollution, for crime, and we had to build it and describe it. And all of these things that we just decided that we had to build, we actually physically had to build with like cardboard. And I still remember it, and I'm talking about it today because it was so interesting. I wasn't being lectured at, and my teachers were extremely passionate in the same way that you are, and it was very impactful.
Yeah, like that is the ethos. Like, that is the ethos of education. They didn't tell you how to do it. They gave you a problem, and they said, hey, this is our problem. Like, how do you help us solve this problem, right? And then that empowered you as the learner to take big swings, to try new ideas, to think outside of the box. It wasn't, all right, there's going to be a test on Monday, and you got to prepare this material. And, because we know memorization doesn't actually work, and we don't have to actually memorize much,
Well, not anymore. Not anymore.
Yeah, so I love that example.
Oh, good. Ben, people that are considering the program that you are a director of, Vermont Academy at Mount Snow, what do you want them to know if they're watching this?
I want them to know that we are looking at this venture from an academics and athletic perspective and character. Really, those are the three things that I want and from people looking at our school. Is I want them to know that they're getting the best academics. They're getting those block classes that I just talked about. They're getting teachers that are inspired to teach their kids. I want them to know that athletically we're going to help their kid. I'm not results focused. Like, it's not like, oh, these kids who come to me have to get on the podium. Rather, I want them to love skiing and snowboarding more than anything else, because that's when they're going to be coachable. I want them to try hard. I want them to not fear failure. I want them to be lifelong learners in that way. And then character-wise, like, I want good humans. And I don't want just that athlete to come to me. I want the whole family to come and join us at Vermont Academy Mount Snow, because I think that a lot of times programs are like, hey, look, we'll take your athlete, here's the door, bye, see you parents. And it's like, no, parents, come on in. Where we're located on the Route 100, there's going to be traffic leaving every Sunday. And I want parents to feel comfortable, hey, pull in, stop your car, come into our hearth, our place of presence. You're going to have to leave your cell phone at the door as well. And enjoy us, like have a cup of coffee and wait out the traffic. And like, let's foster this sense of community here. So that's really what I want you to know.
Wonderful.
We're the VAMS fam.
Nice. Ben, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I could talk to you for like another hour, but we got to wrap it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Rick. I really appreciate being on here.
My name is Ricky McGuckran, and you have been listening to Eager to Know, the podcast. If you haven't already, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another Eager to Know podcast.